everybody.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Araceli, and we are ACDC. So Araceli,
and Colette,
transition financial specialist, and I'm specialized in working with single professional women to rearrange their finances to get more cash available and to reduce their debt and also to retire early. And I'm here with my partner, Colette.
Hi, my name is Colette Rabha. I am a residential real estate broker in Ontario, actually even further than that, GTA West. So I work anywhere between Etobicoke and even Hamilton. So if you're interested in buying or selling in the GTA, call me. I'm ready to have lots of conversations and answer lots of questions. And today we have a great guest today is Tim, and he is an investor in the US. Actually, him and Araceli are partners, and we thought it would be great to have him on today. Hi, Tim.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Very
Tim,
good.
do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you end up investing in the US?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess when I got interested in real estate investing, it was because of an influence from my dad. When I was a kid, I worked in his real estate office. I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I was doing real estate appraisals. And he had a sales force working for him. He was a broker, and he was a real estate appraiser. So I've always remembered that. And then in about 2012, I rented out the basement of my house. And in 2016, I found someone through a business group who invested or offered investments in Canada passively. So I loaned some money. I've invested in non-performing U.S. mortgages from the financial crisis. And then in 16, you and I met up. Just out of the blue, I called you up because we've been friends in the past. And I said, what are you doing in real estate these days? And you had started investing down in Ohio. And that's how I got my introduction down to Ohio and started investing down there with you. So we formed a company. And then we've done, how many flips have we done now? 12?
There's 12 right now. And then we are starting to venture into rentals.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So what you didn't say is that you already had a property in Detroit before you
I have
even
the
knew.
Detroit property. Yes,
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
But you live in Canada, just to be clear.
Yeah,
You're
I live in
Canadian.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've done well. Could be better, but we've done fairly well. And we've got our crews down there, but with the pandemic, we're getting slowed down a little bit. But we still have one property under contract that we've done as a flip. And then we've got one more that we're selling off, and then we're going to go crazy on our duplex and build it all up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well,
But I think the U.S., for me, in Canada, if you're going to get a property in Canada, minimum, no matter where you go, you're going to probably need at least $300,000. You're going to have to go far away. You can't buy in Southern Ontario at that price unless it's a shack. And
there are no shacks for three.
Shacks for sale.
Yeah, you're thinking.
Just to be clear. And when you say Canada, I mean, like we really just should talk about Ontario because we don't know the rest of Canada. I'm sure there are other properties wherever, but you know, if you're a local person who lives in Ontario, this might be something for you because I remember when Araceli and you were talking to me about Cleveland, and it's such a great, and you've done so many years of research in a very specific area, and you know what you're talking about. So just to the people that don't know you or Araceli, like this is something that, you know, it's fascinating to me. And as soon as I can get, you know, my fingers in the pot too, I would love to invest with you guys. I've said it before, because I really believe, yes, there are places in Ontario to really be, you know, it can be lucrative, but it's a lot of work. And when you're by yourself as an investor, it's tough. It's really hard. So I really like the idea of a partnership. And you also offer this to many people to have, you have a system. You have a system of how you bring on investors or how you can introduce people to this market. So should we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the one thing that I want to talk about first, Colette, is that what we do is not for everybody. So this is just an alternative way to get started if you don't have a lot of capital and you don't mind going to the US. Usually the drive is about 5 hours with breaks, with 2 breaks. And some people would just want to be in close to home, right? And if you do have a large capital, by all means, you know, Colette will be able to help you find a property here in Canada that you might be able to profit as well. There's a lot of lucrative ideas, but it requires a large amount of capital to get started. Now, if you're completely new and you have not a lot of capital, just like Tim and I started, probably the US is the easiest way to get started so you can see results. Because in here in Canada, because of the large amount of money, then you need to wait very long time to accumulate enough money in order to do it, right? So that is basically it.
Right. And the other thing too, like the one thing that I get asked the most about is what's going to happen because of the pandemic. I don't see a crystal ball anywhere around here. So
I don't have one either. I ordered it, but it's back order. So
right. I don't know. Tim, do you have one?
I don't have a crystal ball. I've got crystal. But
well, yeah, I have crystals too, but that's the thing. So when you really ask the question, the only thing that we know is we can look at history, obviously, and we can look at you know, what the other experts are saying and come up, and of course, you know, your gut feeling too of what's going to happen. But it's really something that we've never had this sort of pandemic before, where so many people are out of work.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, in my small opinion, if I can just say, I think right now the market is still really hot because it's supply and demand. I know it's different in the States, and I'd love to talk about that too, because here in Canada, I have, right now we're making an offer on a property today. There is already 5 other offers on the property.
Wow.
And this is in the $500,000 range. It's because there is nothing else on the market in that price range. So when you really look at supply and demand, people are just holding off on putting their properties for sale because of the pandemic. If you have to sell because you've already purchased, let's say a new build or something, then yeah, or people are getting a divorce or separation, yeah, they have to sell. But usually if you know, if I can say Canadians are a little more conservative than people in the States, or it's because the way they have to get approved for a mortgage might be a little bit different in the States. So Tim, you told me a great story the other day too, about, you know, how many houses are on the market, or maybe it was Araceli, I forget. Like there's a lot on the market, right?
There's the way the market is structured in the US is different than in Canada. The laws are very similar, and the way transactions take place is very similar, but there are some twists and turns. I wanted to go back to a point I was making earlier about comparing buying a property in Canada versus one down there.
Yeah.
So did you know you can get a fixer-upper in the United States for about maybe $45,000. You might have to put 40 grand of repairs into it, but a fixed up property might be 110 or 100,000. Now that's unheard of in Ontario, and at 100,000, you're going to get something in a fairly good place. Now, if you like, you can buy a real nice wreck on a rotten part of town for $5,000. And it just blows my mind every time I go down there that these kind of, I guess you could call the $5,000 property an opportunity. But, you know, on certain neighborhoods, $80,000, $100,000 gets you something half decent, which you can then rent out and rent down there. Make it worthwhile to rent, because relative to the amount of money you put into the property, the rent gives you a decent return, maybe as high as 8% to start, but goes up to 15% gross rent.
Yeah.
And in the price of the house.
And compared to the GTA, where you buy a property, you're in the hole.
Yeah.
probably make money when you go sell it in 10 years if you can hold on to it. So even if as a rental, you know, unless it's like you really have to take a house and cut it apart and, you know, sell it, you know, be one of those crazy landlords that sell each room, you know, and it's a really tough racket, but, you know, I don't want to be negative, so I want you to talk about the U.S. market.
Well, and in Canada, at least in Ontario, the landlord and tenant laws are very difficult.
Very strict. Yeah, very strict.
In the United States, they're very pro-business, and if a tenant can't pay their rent, they can get out of, you can get out of the lease or get out of the situation fairly quickly. You'll need legal advice and whatnot, but still the process is a lot more forgiving to landlords than it is to tenants as it is in Ontario. Now, whether or not that's fair is another question, but, you know, given that you can find tenants down there who are good people and you can have a good relationship with a tenant, the chances of having a good long-term tenant down there are probably just as good, if not better, than in Canada.
Right. And there's always a vetting process too. So what I do for my landlords is probably the same thing that, you know, you would advise someone. You are connected with real estate agents down there and other professionals. So that way, if, and also property management, right? If somebody want to do it themselves. Yeah.
We've got lawyers, we've got accountants, and we've got property management in place ready to go. It's just an issue of finding a good property in a good area and going through the whole process of you know, inspection, building it up. Maybe it needs some renovations, maybe it doesn't, who knows? But we're looking for investors who are interested in partnering with us.
Me, I'm here.
Okay. As soon as we're able to go and cross the border, like we're really, you know, itching to get out. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So one thing
that figure out how to be classified as an essential business, it would be great.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't we dig a tunnel? Can't we just do that and just say, hey, you know,
I know, exactly. Yeah. I like that idea. So one thing that I wanted to mention about tenants here and in the U.S., a lot of people say, no, I don't want to be a landlord because, you know, there's people that are professional renters that they will not pay and I cannot get them out of my house. Well, the statistics show that only 2% of all tenants are those kind of tenants. And of course, you always hear about the worst kind of thing. You don't hear about the good tenants. And there is actually more good tenants than bad tenants, but you do have to do your due diligence and you have to be on top of them all the time. Please, if you become a landlord, you gotta be tough, but you have to be friendly. And that is a really difficult combination to make. So that is one of the things that you also need to figure out, because if somebody comes up with a story, which a lot of tenants do, you gotta say, no, I'm sorry, you know, I don't buy the story, you have to pay the rent. And it is a tough thing to do, but you just have to understand where you are. That's what I wanted to say about, this is in general here in the US or in Canada. So.
Right. Well, sorry, just to continue on the conversation with that, when it comes to writing leases too, make sure that you have a good lease. You know, somebody like me, I do help landlords with their tenants. I don't help tenants find properties. I don't have time for that. But the interesting thing is, when you have a really good lease and you have really good people, there's, you know, like Araceli said, it's highly unlikely that you're going to have issues with the tenant.
That's right.
But you also have to be a little flexible. I find that not everybody looks great on paper, but when you have that interaction with them and you really like them and you trust them, then sometimes that sort of supersedes, you know, their credit rating. They might have had a rough time with credit because of a divorce or, you know, something like that, having their identity stolen, for example. So I always like to say, you know, really talk to them. And there's tips too that when I start working with a landlord that I go through that with them. But anyway, I digress.
So Tim, tell us a little bit more. What other difference have you seen between the market? Because we want to just tell the audience, if they are considering to go to the US, what is it different? How is it different to find properties? How is it different to do transactions? How is it different? Anything that you've seen?
Well, you know, in Canada, it is possible to get distressed properties informally through tax sales, or if you know a lawyer or a really good agent, you have a number of contacts out there who can find properties, and that's great. That system is apparent down in the US, but it's a lot more vibrant, and there's a lot more supply. And their system in the US relies a lot on foreclosure auctions and tax auctions to clean out properties that have been neglected or where the owners are in distress and need to settle their debts with the bank, what have you. So what we were doing we started in 2017. Since then, we were buying the properties at auction, and we would go down every week. There would be 3 pages, maybe 60 to 100 properties up at auction. A lot of them weren't very good, but some of them were little nuggets that you could pick up. And as an example, one of the first ones we got was in a suburb of Cleveland. And when we looked at it, we kept our fingers crossed. And when we won the bid at the auction, we thought we were paying a little too much. But when we opened up the house, there was one pipe had burst. There was some, I would call it minor damage to the drywall inside the house. But the house had been previously renovated 2 years earlier and was still in fairly pristine condition. So really what it needed was some new carpet, wall repair, and some cleaning. I think we replaced a fridge, and that we only put in about $15,000 of repairs, and we made 40% gross on that flip. So
don't tell people what you make on houses. That's a secret.
I'm bragging.
You are bragging, but people are getting in their heads that this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Because we did really well on that one, and you know we did well on some others, but that one stands out because it was one of our earliest transactions. And you know, it was just like, whoa, you know, all this tension and everything. And then when we finally got the deed and were able to get inside, it was wonderful. The driveway was brand new, and the garage was in immaculate condition. And there had been a little bit of damage from a storm to some of the siding, but that was minor. Everything was just a bunch of minor stuff, coat of paint, and we were laughing. So I'm really proud of that one. So that kind of proved to us that if you do your research properly, and you have to visit these properties, at least to do a drive-by if you can't get inside, the auctions became a really good supply for us. And every week it was at one particular auction that we went to, and there was plenty to pick from. Whether or not we could win the property and the bid was another question. That was actually kind of a hard fight a lot of the time.
Can I ask a question? Are all the properties usually vacant, or have you ever had to deal with people in the property?
I would say 70% of the time they were vacant.
Okay.
There were a couple that were occupied either by a tenant, and in one case we actually had to go in and meet with the owner because she had no idea what was going on. The bank wasn't telling her anything. Yeah. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad someone finally showed up."
Yeah.
We had a long talk with her for about an hour. So, you know.
Talking to her, like Tim was very afraid of going in, and I said, "Well, we have to go tell her that she needs to move out, right?"
Yeah.
Crazy. How does the bank not say, or is it just people that don't open their mail? What is it?
Well, she got the notice, and she phoned the bank, and what she got at the other end was someone who didn't know anything, a $10 an hour call center person. So it came down to the fact that when she signed her mortgage years and years and years ago, she really didn't understand what she was signing.
That's
and
so sad.
You know, like, and that was the other difference. I could look up her mortgage. I found the document on the county records, and I read some of the terms and conditions, and I realized that it was an interest-only mortgage. So she was never going to be able to pay it off. It was like a consumer loan. And the terms of it It started out with a very low teaser rate, but then after a couple of years, the interest rate bumped, and then struggling to pay it. Right?
Wow.
Interest rates fluctuated.
Right.
So, and that was really, it was a holdover from the 2007, 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah. And how do you feel about, you know, emotionally when that happens? I mean, I know it's really none of our business when something like that, but you can't help but be a human being and say,
well,
I'm
it was,
sorry.
there's a very greedy, cold-blooded side to it. And that was, in my opinion, a Wall Street action taken because of the deregulation of their financial markets.
Right.
But I mean, a Canadian bank would do exactly the same thing. If you defaulted on a payment, they'd come after you without hesitation. They have to. Because,
yeah, at least there's notices and notices and notices and ways to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
The laws in Canada are a little bit different. There's no such thing as foreclosure in Canada.
Well, there's power of sale.
There is.
Right, called something different. And then even with that, even with the power of sale, like there are ways to stop it or to, you know, there's different financial things that you could do before you go to a power of sale. But it's those people that do nothing and just sit and wait. Yeah. That's when, you know, shit hits the fan. Sorry.
but even then, once we won the property at the auction, the original owner had a right of redemption. I think it's 30 days or so.
30 days, yes. 30 days.
They have 30 days. If they're able to arrange some alternative financing, then they can still get the property back. Yeah,
we lost one like that, and it was a really great property. And the owner rearranged some financing, and then they took it back. So so it's still,
so you have to have a thick skin in that kind of game.
Oh, absolutely.
And I say this to my clients too, until you have those keys in your hand, it is not yours. Like even if
that's right.
all the paperwork is signed, everything is great, until that transaction happens, money, keys. Not yours.
Remember what I said before is that if you are an investor, you gotta look at the numbers. Fall in love with the numbers, not fall in love with the property.
Yeah.
Because if it does not work in paper, it doesn't matter how it looks like. It just does. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Stick to your numbers. Don't get emotional.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you really, really want the property, and then somebody's in there with deep pockets, and you've got a number in your mind of where you'd like to buy the property when you're at the auction or using another method. Then you know, you've got to stick to that number. Go over it by $500, but don't do it any more than that. Right.
So that's the Canadian, that to me, I think that's a very Canadian thing, that we're very, you know, we want to be so careful with our money. We always want to pad it a little bit. And I say that to my investors too, that, you know, when you're really looking at the numbers, you can be conservative. You can be totally conservative, but at an auction when it's exciting and people, and there's, you know, tons of stuff going on, of course, people will get emotional and get excited.
Absolutely.
Hey, my numbers work out because I haven't considered holding, you know, how long it's going to take to hold. They're not going to give a contingency plan. Whatever those numbers in their books are might be very different than yours. So being a conservative Canadian, I need a t-shirt.
Yeah.
To say the numbers have to work out. They do. So absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah. The other side of it is you're going into a different geographical area and a different judicial environment.
Right.
And all the information that you can get, you're going to have to get it, because people will try to sell you something, but they leave out detail or they don't know.
Of course.
And you don't, when you're in a foreign jurisdiction like that, you don't want to get into legal difficulties, because the twists and turns around that are a lot more difficult to deal with just because you're unfamiliar with it.
Right. And every state is different too, from what I understand.
Absolutely, yeah.
So people who are investing in Florida might have a whole different kind of
completely different things. Yeah.
So I have a good question too. Sorry about that. As far as getting an accountant, do you get a U.S. accountant, or do you get a Canadian accountant that knows U.S. details, markets?
You can do both. I would recommend getting an account locally down there. It's cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah. There was another thing I wanted to point out as well, is that people like to invest in the United States, and Florida being the example, or Arizona, they want a vacation property that they can rent.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of houses that are going to come up on the market.
Yeah, they are.
COVID.
There's a lot of Canadians who might be selling off, right? Because they can't get down there, right, with the border closed.
Right.
But in Cleveland, what you're doing is it's a business.
Yeah.
You don't go to Cleveland for a vacation.
Right.
I mean, I have done that because I like the city. But I mean, Cleveland for a vacation? Well, maybe for a weekend.
There are some nice places. Come on.
Yeah, there is actually some nice places.
There's tons of places in Cleveland to go and do stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get around because it's not big like Toronto.
But it's a working town is what you're saying. These are working people that you want as renters because they can pay the rent. Yeah. So that's why you like Cleveland.
Yeah. But I'm not buying it because of the climate.
Right.
No.
That's a whole other thing. Right.
Yeah.
No, but it's a secure, I really like the idea of it too. I think it's, and as far as driving distance, I think 4 or 5 hours is not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's not.
We need to get, as long as the borders are open, obviously, it's not the worst to drive a few hours like that.
And also there's another question that I've had in the past, which is people said, why don't you invest in Buffalo, right? Or on other towns? But my question and my answer to people is, you really have to kind of narrow down and zoom in into an area.
Yeah.
You cannot be an expert. Like every single geographical area, state by state varies, even neighborhood by neighborhood, county by county. All the rules change, prices change, even street by street. So for us, it took us almost 6 months going there every single week to go. And I said, why is this neighborhood this price? Why is this neighborhood this, to understand the reality of the situation, what's happening, the gentrification. And a lot of the things that says, well, you can always do it with Google Earth. Don't do that. Real estate, all those Google Earth, all of these things are sometimes behind 2 years.
Right.
So you can really see the condition of the house that you're buying today with a picture that has been there for 2 years.
Right.
Remember that house that we were looking for that wasn't there at all? And it was in Google Maps. And we drove and says, okay, wait a second, the house is green. Where is the green house? And we went up and down and the house wasn't there. It was torn down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have to be really, really careful, especially with those kind of things. And even just if the house is still there, what is the current condition of that house? 2 years is a long time, right?
Well, and that's, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can look up all the county records as well as get street view and satellite views and that kind of thing. But when you get there, the records might say, oh, it has a garage. Well, it doesn't have a garage anymore because they just tore it down 6 months earlier, right? That kind of thing.
Well,
or the listing says it has 3 bathrooms. But really what it is 2 bathrooms with an extra toilet sitting on its own out in the basement, right? So,
right. Yeah. Well, that's the same thing with buyers here, and not just for income properties, but also, somebody who wants to buy a house that they're not familiar with the area. Because of the way I've had the last few clients I've had, they're just priced out of the GTA. So we've had to go outside of the GTA. I've gone up to Uxbridge. I've gone up to, we're looking in Hamilton. We're looking in Milton. Like things like this where you really have to know the area to say, okay, if this is a great Cambridge. Cambridge, some beautiful places in Cambridge, some not so beautiful places. So until you find, obviously with me, if you were working with an agent to say, yes, I'm familiar with that area or not, I'm honest about that and say, you know what, it's not something that I would necessarily invest myself. But if that's where you want to live because it's close to work or whatever it is, then that's fine. And we can do that research once that person says, okay, let's go and really, concentrate, let's say on Hamilton. Then I'll say to them, the first thing I say is, before we do anything, before you look at MLS, drive around, write down the street names, write down the areas that you like, write down the absolute no way, because there's a factory right there, let's say. So these are the things that until you figure out, you know, not just the realtor, but you yourself have to do a little research before you make an investment. This is a huge investment, regardless if it's in the States, $100,000, or in Canada, like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, work with the right people, do your own research.
That's right.
You know, find that it's, you know, I hate to say location, location, location. Everybody's been saying that for 1,000 years since real estate has been a thing, maybe more than 1,000 years. But it's something that if you don't like the location, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where, you know, how beautiful the house is. If it's in the middle of nowhere and you don't want to be there.
That's right. And one of the things is, if you're going to do, you have to pick your strategy. If you're doing flips,
Right.
then you have to select a different neighborhood, because that neighborhood it's a little bit higher up. People want to buy. If you're going to be renting, then you have to go to another location, something that is more accessible by bus, that it has more malls or things that you can go by foot to buy things.
And
so
know who your renters will be.
Exactly.
So if you want a high-end tenant, you want to get a nicer place. You don't want to, you know, be in the slums and think, oh yeah, I'll fix it up, I'll over improve it, and then, you know, get whatever amount of rent like in the fancy area. It's not going to happen.
No, absolutely not.
Beautiful finishes, people exactly that they want a location, no matter if they're a buyer or a tenant.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So one thing that you mentioned earlier is that you say that, and I've seen some listings here in Canada that they have $1. I tell you one thing, in the States, you can actually buy something for $1.
Yeah, but do you really want it?
That's true.
Sometimes you do. It depends, right?
Right. And this is the interesting thing that, you know, like this is a much longer conversation. We're already at almost 11:40. But I just wanted to say the one thing that people do when let's say I have, okay, here, I'm going to sell a mug.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put $1 on it. But then when the first thing what that buyer is going to do is they're going to contact me. So when you see those listings, that's exactly the strategy of the listing agent. They just want you to make a phone call. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you read the whole listing, I actually saw one this morning on my feed and it said $1 and it was in Toronto, and I said, okay, come on, you know, this is ridiculous. So what do? I read the whole listing. At the bottom it says 3.89 million.
Whoa.
And I went, okay. That's weird. Like, why would they do that? And it's just to get your eyes on it. Because as a real estate, you know, professional, or as somebody who's an investor, and that's on their feed, there could be 1,000 people getting that listing because it's $1. And if I know someone who says, hey, I'm looking for a property, this is my budget, I want to tear the houses down, I want to build a townhouse complex, 3-4 million is not a big deal. So that's why they do it. To me, I would never do that. I think it's a bit ridiculous, because if I was that type of a listing agent, I would be a little bit more professional. I think it's kind of misleading or
absolutely,
or ridiculous.
Okay.
I don't know anybody who else does that. Do people do that in the car industry, or
probably
like
not.
What other industry does anybody do that?
I don't know.
Well, I imagine in the car business, you walk into the showroom and you're sort of walking through the, I don't want to say what the word is, but sort of the, you know, the salesman's going to look at you and go, well, maybe.
You're in the jungle and there's lions.
Yeah.
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 Or sharks.
Okay, so I wanna wrap up the conversation. Tim, if you were going to do or make a suggestion to people that want to go in the U.S., what would you tell them if they want to buy in the U.S.?
To call you guys.
Well, of course.
Just call Tim. What do you got to know? There you go. You have an expert right here.
Go on an American website and start poking around and make a list of surprises, because you'll get a lot. You'll get a lot of surprises. And then book a meeting with Araceli or I, hop in the car with us and head down to the area, and we'll show you some more surprises. and we'll try to educate you about the ins and outs of the market down there. Now, this is all, we need permission from the various governments, right? But when the border opens up, that'll be possible. But there's a lot you can learn just by looking around on the county website, on realtor.com, not realtor CA, right? Realtor.com or Zillow. And you'd be surprised what you see with the pictures and the before and after as well. And I've kept a few listings on my own on my computer as, wow, that's unusual. And I learned something just by reading up on that property, right? So I'm willing to share those as well.
Yeah, but this is in general, the advice that I can give people is, if you don't like the area that we invest, let's say that you want to go to Florida, look for somebody that is already there in the area that you are looking for. You don't have to go with us. You don't have to go to the area that we know. But if you are considering to go into the States just because of the return, it's a little bit better. Look for somebody that is local that can show you around. You can call realtors. You can call construction companies, contractors, right? Or maybe you already know somebody that is in that specific area. But anything that you do, you have to have time to analyze the market, whatever it is. So just don't go and buy it because it's cheap. Cheap doesn't mean that you're going to get a return.
And don't forget, when you're buying in the States, it's cash only, no mortgages.
It depends where you go.
Okay.
Like if you go to Florida, Canadians can get a mortgage.
Okay.
But in Ohio, you can't. So you also have to do a research on how you can buy, you know, what kind of entities you need to create. All of those things, it varies by state. So,
but you guys do this as a business. Like, this is the thing, that you're actually offering this. You have packages for people to they don't have to do it alone. That's my biggest thing was when I met you guys and we spoke years ago about it, where I really, when you say, here, I have like this money burning in my pocket at that time, no longer, but you know, what do you do with it? And then you say, okay, there's somebody that's already gone ahead of me. I don't have to invent the wheel. You guys know what you're doing. You know what kind of returns you can get. And just, you know, you have your contractors, you have all your people down there that you're all set up already. I'm willing to pay for that. That's a service that is
right now
priceless.
Colette, just to let you know how we work, we have a joint venture, so you can come into one of our flips and, you know,
well, and
provide money and all that stuff, right?
Tim promised me I can actually come in and do the demo, so I want to do that.
Yeah, you can do that as well, right?
That's my favorite.
A drill and a saw, and you can use those.
So we do that, and the other thing is also, if you would like to acquire a property that is cash flowing, we can do the analysis. We can find the property. We can make sure that everything is done well, and that is, we do some consulting. So we just charge you a fee to find the property and everything. So
beautiful.
Those are the two things that we could do. So if somebody wants to have more information about how to work with us, just contact myself or Tim, and we can see what where you're at and exactly what strategy you want to follow, and we can go from there. So,
yay! That's good.
So thank you so much, Tim, for coming out. And, you know, as usual, you know, we usually sometimes we go over time and a little bit on tangent, but, you know, we can get the point across for this. So
thanks for having me on this morning.
Okay, no problem. So with that on, we're going to see you next week with another topic. You know, we have so many topics on real estate. As you know, we love talking about real estate. Colette and I, we can talk for hours about it. And there's so many things.
We actually do after when the camera's off.
Yeah.
Honestly, ask your questions, because without you guys out there, you know, we feel like there's nobody's listening. So please call us, text us, whatever it is. Give us your questions, because I get great questions and I'm very happy about that. And I'd love to share them with you. So keep coming.
Okay.
See you next week.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.